This is how Jin Ping Mei is read. Chapter 49. Embroidered Statue Edition. Please bend your body to pray for glory. Meet a monk who and show up to administer medicine. Xihua Book. Simon King welcomes. The Song Dynasty Patrol Monk meets a monk who on a farewell tour at Yangfu Temple. 1. Reception of Song Shunjian. From a political point of view, Jin Ping Mei tells the story of Simon King's rise from a small drugstore owner to a criminal official at King County's criminal court. From the appearance of Simon King to the final death of Simon King. From the beginning of the prosperity of Simon's family to the final collapse of the tree and the dispersal of the Hosens. We can see it as a complete parabolic process. In this set of parabolic trajectories, Chapter 49 is the commanding height. Although Simon King will be promoted later and the Simon family's business is still expanding, it has gradually gone parabola downward. The sun is declining, and the strength of the situation is at the end. The reason why this chapter is the pinnacle of the whole book can be concluded directly from the chapter. Please bow your head and ask for honor. At that time, there was a stir in Dongbing Prefecture and a big commotion in King County. They all said a high-ranking official from Simon, who was also recognized by the inspector, came to his house to have a drink. This inspector is the new Inspector Song Qianyan, who replaced Seng Xiaoshu, was a high-ranking official who could directly reach the emperor. For the people of King County, the former high-ranking official of Simon was indeed at the height of his power. Encountering Monk Hu, he showed up to administer the medicine. No matter how charming you are, with 12 beauties and red makeup, you will obey me and be as hard as a gun all night long. After receiving Monk Hu's medicine, Simon King's sexual ability has reached an incredible peak in life. The so-called nurturing what a big turtle was extremely exaggerated at this moment. However, what is entertaining is that this chapter is almost entirely written in a very ridiculing tone. Let's first look at the part about welcoming the Song Dynasty inspector to see how the high-ranking Simon officials received their superiors. Song Shun pressed. Hu Zhifu and Dongping and Hezo and counties have military and health officials. Officials and students, monks and Taoist yin and yang, all with famous handbooks, waiting to welcome them. Zhou Xiaowei, Jingdu supervisor, and Zhang Tuanlian of the commander's office all led men and horses to carry weapons. Balo, Qingqi preaches, the chickens and dogs are gone. Central leaders are inspecting local areas, and officials at all levels are waiting to welcome them. This is what they should do, and it is also what they should do if all the people clear the way to avoid it. However, the words all chickens and dogs have disappeared are really wonderful. There may be times when the government can make people's chickens and dogs feel uneasy, but sometimes they can make people's chickens and dogs dare not be uneasy. There is a huge difference between Simon King and Song Zunyi, and there is no chance of flattery at all. However, fortunately, Kai Yushi, formerly Kai Zhuangyuan, today Zunyan Yushi, can guide them. Kai Yushi, there is an acquaintance of Simon Qianbing. In King County, he is from a wealthy family in this area. He is prudent, wealthy, and courteous. He is also a disciple of Mr. Kai. He has an acquaintance with the student. I want the student to accompany Brother Nyan to him. One meal at home. What do you think, brother? Song Yushi. It's hard for students to get there when they first arrive here. Kai Yushi, Brother Nyan. What are you afraid of? Since we are on the same level as Yunfeng, what's the harm in you and I walking away? Kai Yushi repaid Simon King's kindness by giving him a meal. It was a great honor for Song Shunjian, who had nowhere to go, to have a meal at Simon King's house. Although they were rude to each other, however, there is also the Yunfeng superior of Butler's Eye. Friends of friends are friends. So why not meet so? Simon King became the receptionist for the censor in full view of his colleagues and the common people. Host, with Simon King's family property. Although it is not as good as the Jia mansion to welcome the imperial concubine for a royal visit, it is still possible to receive the minister and have a casual meal. After all the officials of all prefectures and counties had made full preparations, the two censors arrived belatedly and bowed into the hall to celebrate with Simon. Song Shunjian was very polite. I've heard about the reputation for a long time. This student is here for the first time, and he hasn't enjoyed himself yet, so he shouldn't disturb him. If he hadn't been invited by Brother Kai Nyan to pay homage, how could he be so lucky to receive you? The more polite the polite words in official circles are, the colder they are in reality. On the surface, they don't dare to disturb me, but what they actually mean is, why do you, a petty official like you, receive me? Immediately after saying a word, Simon King panicked, fell down and bowed down, saying, I am a military officer, and I am under the command of the emperor. I am fortunate to be visited by you today, and I am proud of you. So he bowed respectfully and bowed with great humility. The censor of the Song dynasty returned the favor and explained the etiquette. At that time, the censor of the Song dynasty was asked to sit on the left, while Simon Qingshui, the prime minister, accompanied him. Simon King is very smart. Don't be obedient when you get an advantage. It's a great honor for the leader to come to your home for dinner. Don't brag to the leader about what you don't dare to do, let alone Yunfeng points. Be obedient and say that I am as a military attaché, under your honor, jurisdiction. Thank you for your favor. Don't say anything else. Just bow when it's time to bow, and salute when it's time to do so. There is no need to think of oneself as the master. Song Shun presses Juzuo. He takes the upper seat. Kaiyushi's as I write. He is the master. You just hang down and accompany me. What followed was all kinds of eating, drinking and having fun. There are countless delicacies, delicious soups, and dancing and singing, and the father-in-law before the meal. However, Song Shun didn't sit there for long before he was ready to go back home. Simon King couldn't hold him back, so he had to before leaving. I gave him a large gift. Although Song Shunjian was polite, he still accepted it with embarrassment. Simon King Cheng was frightened and uneasy about the hurried patrol of Song dynasty. He carefully asked Kaiyushi, I think Song Gong is a bit strange. This is of course not to say that Song Zhen's character is not good. In fact, he is worried that he has not done enough. After all, he can turn his hands to make clouds and rain. No one can afford to offend the censor. In response, Kaiyushi smiled and said, It's not too strange. It's just our first meeting today. Why don't we show off? Because of the first meeting, I wanted to make some appearances. This contains two meanings. The first is that in the 36th episode, Kaiyushi came to the first meeting as the new champion, and naturally made some appearances. But that is not the case today. If you have any good tricks, feel free to use them. The second is that although Song Shun Press made some appearances in the first meeting today, there is only so much time to come, and you will naturally understand what the next response will be like when Song Shun Press asked for the 8 Immortals Cauldron in the 74th chapter. He really didn't do much look. Therefore, although the text of Song Shunjian is very clear, and although the following section describes how to arrange Kaiyushi's night life, today's Kaiyushi is tomorrow's Song Shunjian. With such contrast, we can understand that this chapter's there is nothing wrong with the title. Song Shunjian is indeed the protagonist we are welcoming today. 2. Range Kaiyushi. Now that Kaiyushi has relented and stopped pretending, Simon King understands. Now that he has agreed to stay the night, what else can he arrange for the leader besides eating, drinking and having fun? He immediately ordered Dian. I went to the courtyard and called them Dong Zhaoer and Han Jinchor. They were brought to the back door on a sedan chair. Don't let anyone know. Why not let someone know? Because everyone in the city now knows that Kaiyushi spent the night at Simon's house. Even if a little bit of news leaks out, the news of Kaiyushi visiting prostitutes at Simon's house may shock the world, right? Therefore, Simon King's arrangement is quite hard-working, and he will do good things to the end. In order to give Kaiyushi a big surprise, he has been quiet and calm. On the contrary, Kaiyushi seemed to have underestimated the intelligence of Simon officials. When the host arranged for an actor to come up and wait on him, Kaiyushi ordered a song called The Proud Fisherman. This poem was completely deleted from the embroidery book. It was a pity. Fortunately, the lyrics were kept intact. Here are a few lines to describe it. Heartfelt lyrics. Where do the beauties of the 3 mountains know? I am thinking about my dreams. Who do I feel this love for? I am blinded by the hope of making friends. Why can't my enemies be convenient? The last coda of the whole song is, if the sky is willing to make it convenient, sooner or later send your lover to your pillow to prevent the scholar from sleeping alone. In order for Simon King to arrange arrangements, Kaiyushi, as a scholar, was so straightforward that he did his best. The next step is I've been in trouble for a day. Let's stop drinking. I won't drink anymore if you don't understand me again. Just forget about your erotic dreams. Simon King was very calm and just asked Kaiyoshi to change clothes later, and then dismissed the rest one after another, cleared away the remaining tables, and closed the corner door of the garden. Only then did he realize that two prostitutes in full makeup were already standing at the foot of the steps. Kaiyushi's happiness index went up and down like a roller coaster. He was flattered, confused, and almost cried with joy. Sequin, how can you be so loving? I can't help it. There was no polite refusal, but he just felt that the host's arrangement that's so thoughtful. What should Simon King do? The answer is nothing. I just mean it were something like that. That would be too low level. Simon King was calm and composed, and gave the leader the most comfortable step. How is it different from the past trip to Dongshin? So majestic, so elegant. Kaiyoshi, who was well-read in poetry and books, could not help but be filled with emotion. I'm afraid I'm not as talented as Shi, but you are as good as Wang Yujin. So he joined hands with the two prostitutes into the moon, as if Liu Ruan had entered the rooftop. What is toward Dongshin? Li Bai's poem bringing a prostitute to the East Mountain. I feel sad and sad to think in. My prostitute is like the flower moon today, while the grass of another prostitute's ancient tomb is cold, which is about Z. And taking the prostitute to the East Mountain, Liu Ruan enters the Tiantai is a story from the Southern Dynasty, that Liu and Ruan entered Tiantai Mountain and met a beautiful fairy by chance, in the area of Shishuok-senyu. These were all elegant stories, but in Ximon's Jade Pavilion, we feel extremely unnatural. Not only Tang poetry and song lyrics, but also Wei and Jin styles, myths, and legends, deconstruction of Jin Ping Mei, the traditional beauty of classical literature and the conceited temperament of classical literati were all disgusted by the vulgar market at this moment. Next, let's take a look at Kaiyushi's personal performance, where we can further appreciate the author's cynical sense of entertainment. Kaiyoshi, who was drunk and well-fed, was overjoyed to meet the two prostitutes. Under the stimulation of hormones, he became very poetic and wrote a rhymed poem on the spot in Jade Chuanwen without adding any words. It has been less than half a year since the Jun family arrived, and the cultural relics in the mansion are still vague. After the rain, the book boy opens the medicine garden, and when the wind returns, the fairy walks on the flower bed. Why rush the clock when you are about to get drunk? It will remind you even more when the poem is finished. This departure adds new hope, and I don't know when I will come back again. Is it well written? It seems to be quite good, and it is much better than the stupid Overlord and Dream of Red Mansions. However, as the #1 scholar, it is really below the standard. Here are my thoughts after reading. 1. The first and last couplets are too plain, even wider than by Jui 2. The couplet is very bad because after the rain, the scholar opens a medicine garden, does not meet the rules, and loses its cohesion. 3. If the chin couplet expresses the one scholar's ecstatic mood when facing the fairy, then the neck couplet expresses the impatient mood when facing the beautiful prostitute. Because of this, although there were still several times of pushing cups and changing cups, Kaiyoshi couldn't hold back anymore and said bluntly, "Sequin, it's late at night. Sequin, there's a lot of one today. A spring night is worth 1,000 pieces of gold. Mr. Simon, please withdraw immediately." Everyone in the romance field is well informed. The #1 scholar who has a penchant for names leaves prostitutes with nice names behind. Jade Pavilion finally has Kaiyoshi and the fairy as alone time. He couldn't help but imitate the dignity of thousands of years of literati and poets, and show off his talents in front of the newly made prostitutes. So he wrote a folding fan poem to Dong Zhaoers. Waxian number. The courtyard in the small courtyard is quiet, and the window screen is soaked in a pool of moon. It's not too late to meet each other by chance, and the crepe myrtle man looks at the crepe myrtle flowers. It's a pity that the third couplet, "It's not too late to meet each other by chance," has once again embarrassed the champion. Not only is it lost in rhythm, but the content of "It's not too late" also completely sells itself out. It turns out that clock is not in a hurry either. Don't rush if you leak. It's still early in the spring. I'm still waiting for Ziwei Lang versus Ziwei Hua. The Huarong faces each other, and they are extremely happy and affectionate. I think Kai Juanyuan must be extremely proud at this time. Not only is he enjoying the beautiful things of bridal chamber flowers and candles, with the excitement of being named on the gold medal list, he even writes poems so well. He uses Bai Jui's Lagerstromia flowers with ease, a very appropriate nickname for Waxian. Let me add here, Bai Jui's original poem Lagerstromia is written like this: Your Excellency Silen's writing is quiet, and the carvings in the bell and drum towers are long. Who is your companion when you sit alone at dusk? The crepe myrtle is against the crepe myrtle. It is not difficult to understand the meaning of the poem. The Ziwei in the last sentence is the name of Zhongshu Shiren. Bai Jui, who was a Zhongshu Shiren at that time, was indeed facing Ziwei Hua. The joke seems to be too big. Or maybe the author is not only making fun of Kai Juanyuan, but also can't help but make fun of life as well. Perhaps in the author's opinion, life is just that. So what if it's elegant? So what if it's literature? Aren't you still groveling in front of the wine bag and rice bag? A contemporary example will help you understand. There is a song in Oleander Thimble, 1,000 Family Poems and Folk Songs compiled by Feng Minglong, which goes like this. Umayyan was crazy about his sister, so he seduced his lover into the bridal chamber, and the beauty was close to each other, falling on the elephant bed. We are in love with each other, like mandarin ducks and phoenixes. Sister said, Lang, I hear you are as young and pretty as the crepe myrtle flower to the crepe myrtle man. It's a flirting folk song and a poem from 1,000 families, perhaps for the literati of the Ming dynasty in a bloody environment. This was a real pleasure. Finally, it was time for Kai Yashi to pay for this romantic night. The Hurong faced each other, and after a night of lustful pleasure, Kai Yashi and Dong Jiar gave Dong Jiar one tael of silver, wrapped in a big red paper envelope. The dignified champion man only paid one tael of silver to spend the night with a prostitute. It was still wrapped in a big red paper envelope, so I must be careful about what I did in fact. According to the price concept we calculated before, one tael of silver is enough to pay for a prostitute in Jin Ping Mei. However, he is the Salt Patrol censor after all. Whenever a high-ranking official from Ximen hooks up with someone else's wife or something, the amount of money he takes out is not less than a few taels. Is it possible that the dignified censor Kai is still short of money for visiting prostitutes? Although it is ironic, I think it is indeed bad. After all, Kai Yashi just borrowed money to go back to his hometown to visit relatives not long ago. He has only been back to his job for a short time. The salary of officials in the Ming dynasty was low, and corruption and bribery took time to accumulate, so the price index in Kai Yashi's mind is understandable. In Ximen King's words, it's a civilian job, and he has a lot of money for you. In the end, Ximen King compensated them out of his own pocket. 3. Amazing returns. Kai Yashi spent the night with prostitutes in the garden. Early the next morning, Ximen King used the Yongfu Temple as a pavilion to bid farewell. Kai Yashi was satisfied and reluctant to leave. It can be said that Ximen King could not have done a better job in receiving the leaders this time. Just treating guests to dinner and wine would cost 1,000 taels of gold and silver. You must know that Ximen King never asked the county government or the criminal court to reimburse him with public funds. This reception all the leaders pay is from their own pockets. What's more, Ximen King also sold out his grievances. Take a look at the first words Ximen King said when he received Song Shenjing. I am a military attaché. He called himself servant and I am with you. When he sent Song Shenjing away, at night Kai Yashi and Dong Jiar, the two were playing chess. Ximen King was accompanying him, and Han Jinxuan was serving wine from a golden bottle. Kai Yashi had won a game of chess, and Dong Jiar had eaten it, and Han Jinxuan had given it to Ximen King. Let's have a drink together. After drinking, the two of them had another drink. Dong Jiar won and quickly handed Kai Yashi a glass of wine. While Ximen King had another drink with him, the word accompany was repeated several times, like a spring and autumn festival. Where is this Ximen King who wields power and takes advantage of human life? Isn't this as humble as a slave? As lowly as a prostitute? This is where Jin Ping Mei is full of charm. Regardless of its inconspicuous appearance, it always has a deeper connotation. It is said that many dignitaries love Jin Ping Mei. Looking into the reason, I think it is probably not because it is a pornographic book. Perhaps through Jin Ping Mei, one can really learn some things about being an official, a businessman, a slave and a prostitute. Road. Here is a story about Yuan Hongdao, a literary master who was closely related to Jin Ping Mei. In the 23rd year of Wanli, 27-year-old Yuan Hongdao became the magistrate of Wexian County. When he first took office, he was quite proud, thinking that he would be able to enjoy the scenery of Taihu Lake and Suzhou. However, he soon discovered that official life was very different from his imagination. So he began to write letters to friends constantly, telling about the hardships of being an official. My brother made an order, and he behaved in an extremely ugly manner, which is indescribable. If you meet an official, you will be a slave. If you are waiting for a visitor, you will be a prostitute. If you manage money and grain, you will be an old man. And if you tell the people, you will protect the mountain woman. In one day, it will be warm and cold, and it will be yin and yang. The evil deeds of the world are so painful that he resigned soon afterward. When you meet an official, you become a slave. When you meet a passerby, you become a prostitute. This sentence is really beautiful. Slave is Simon King's servant, and prostitute is Simon King's company. This is the whole attitude of Simon King in this chapter. No matter his background or knowledge, he has to learn from slaves and work hard like a prostitute. The attitude of getting closer to the upper class is also the attitude of Chinese officialdom. Throughout the ages, Yuan Hongdao once praised Jin Ping Mei in a letter to Dong Qichang. The paper is full of clouds and clouds, which is better than Mei Chang's 7 hairs. Unfortunately, he only saw the full page of clouds and clouds, but failed to learn from Jin Ping Mei. After learning a little about being an official, a slave, and a prostitute, you will naturally be able to bear the hardships of officialdom. Of course, fate will not be unkind to those who work hard, especially those who work as hard as Simon King. After working as a slave and a prostitute all day, it was time to take stock of rewards for Simon King. Is the meal of 1,000 taels for nothing? Is the torta dongshan that I have worked so hard on for nothing? Isn't Butler Zhai's double-heartedness worthless? All the unresolved issues from the last time were packaged and dealt with by Simon King, in front of Kai Yeshi this time. The first question is the Mao King case. Although Zhang Xiaoshu's memorial was suppressed by Kai Jing, Mao King was still arrested by Zhang Xiaoshu's men. Simon King was anxious, and before leaving, he begged Kai Yeshi, "This matter has been settled. If you see Song my lord, please give me a favor. It means that I have settled Zhang Xiaoshu. And Mao King, please let me go." Kai Yeshi lived up to his expectations and said to Song Shen, "This is someone who is not in the hands of Zhang Gong. What do you care about him?" So Mao King let him go, and In Tong stopped caring about him. As for the 2 boatmen, kill for life. Never wait for time. The case is settled. The second problem is the matter of salt. Let's start with Kai Jing's 7 things in the last chapter about salt introduction. To put it simply, the court is short of food and invites wealthy private people to pay for it voluntarily. Then, the court adds interest and distributes salt introduction to the people. To a certain extent, private wealthy people are allowed to sell salt. Private salt. In the agricultural society, salt merchants are the richest in the world. Of course, the shrewd Simon King will not miss this excellent opportunity. He is even smarter. If he can get the salt a few days earlier than other merchants, then there will be a bigger market and bigger profits. Benefits? So on the night of the Tour de Dongshan, Simon King made a request to Kai Yeshi, who was in charge of the salt patrol, $30,000 of Huai salt. Beg for it as soon as possible. Simon King's expectation was 10 days. But Kai Yushi's new official took office with great enthusiasm, and he waved his hand. "I will give it to you 1 month earlier than other businessmen." He dared not be accurate in what he said when he was drunk. Before leaving the next day, Simon King still did not forget his numerous warnings. What the student said yesterday. The old gentleman went there and the student went here to study, so be sure to pay attention to it. It means that after Kai Yusheng takes office, I will send servants to come here with documents. Please remember what you promised. Kai Yeshi was soft-spoken and said politely, "Don't say that the virtuous man is here. As long as he pays a high price and has a piece of paper, all students will follow it. Don't say that your servants come in person. They just write a note. I do it immediately. You have been a slave and a prostitute for me, and I have been a slave and a prostitute for you. The friendship between Simon King and Kaiyoshi is ironclad, and their position in the Taishi lineage is also stable. When you are in politics, I am a businessman, and when you are an official, I help you. It can be said that Simon King, who started from scratch, is almost impeccable in what he can do. Fortunately, I got who sang medicine. After seeing off Kaiyoshi, Simon King returned to Yangfu Temple to rest. He saw a strange-looking monk, so he invited him home. The monk gave Simon King 100 pills to improve sexual performance. In fact, from the perspective of the grand narrative background of Jin Ping Mei, the second half of this chapter seems very abrupt. Both the story content and the plot design are out of tune with the context. However, if we change the angle and take the most basic concept of the novel, characteristics, allegory looking at this story, we can see the author's good intentions in ranging it at the commanding height of the book in Chapter 49. Simon King in Yangfu Temple went to change clothes in the back and saw Menghu when he came out. The image of Menghu looks very much like a phallus, and his birthplace comes from Hanting Temple, a waist-high peak in dense pine forest. How does it compare to King Gang Peak of Wuji Cliff in Dawang Mountain in A Dream of Red Mansions, which is really true, a phallic symbol? Simon King felt that Menghu was born with strange features, so he invited him to his home to get some tonic. After Menghu arrived at Simon's house, he looked around and saw that from the bead curtain on the door, the blanket on the floor, to the table, chairs, screens, and even the scrolls on the wall, everything became a symbol of the penis. Even the food Simon King invited him to eat, all related to eroticism. In short, in Menghu's eyes, everything in Simon King's house is the world of penis and the world of sex. In Simon King's eyes, Menghu is a penis. So, what is Simon King in Menghu's eyes? The text does not say, but when Simon King died, we will read a memorial poem written by Shui Shukai. Simon King was also described as a phallus that lived in the brocade crotch team, and was collected in the waist-high library. In other words, Hussein appears to be a penis and a form, but in essence he is a monk and empty in this. He uses the heart of a Buddha to complete the allegory about form. Simon King is a human being, but everything about him is in the eyes of the monks, gods and Buddhas. Come on. It's all penis. It's all sex. Obviously, we have entered a highly allegorical novel space. Just like the novel space where Jia Baoyu saw Wu Zixin's precious mirror, Zhao Feiyan's dancing disc, and the papaya that hurt young Taizen's breasts in Qin Keqing's room. Just like the witty debate between Sushi and Foyan circulated among the people in this world. If there is color in the heart, then all things are colored. If there is Buddha in the heart, then all things are Buddha. Furthermore, not only this half of the book, but the entire Jin Ping Mei is such an allegorical space. A life allegory about the dialectics of space and color. In this way, we look back at the first chapter and see that the good intentions of those who rewrote the portrait version are different from those who wrote the word version. From the indestructible word wealth and color to the like bubbles in a dream, like the reply of electricity in the Diamond Sutra, like dew, from the calculation of all the agencies and operations to penetrating the world of space and color, polishing through the organs of birth and death, directly surpassing the supreme, never falling into the trap of right and wrong. This is the core connotation of the whole book. Wealth and sex, and even wine, sex and wealth are all inseparable. It is endless. Only by penetrating it can we understand the full meaning of life and desire, and understand the spiritual essence of the unity of form and space. In this way, when we look at the nature of the whole book seriously, just like the evil that is transcended at the end through the reflection of the image of Menghu, we have a new artistic concept, in the transcendent theme of the compassion of our Buddha and the unity of form and space. Although the people in Jin Ping Mei are all beings who cannot redeem themselves in this world, getting rich and getting rich coexist with poverty, and power and immorality coexist. Economic prosperity brings materialistic desires, and indulgence and extravagance bring personality loss. All pain, death, sin, and retribution cannot alert them, and all ideals, spirit, morality, and dignity cannot save them. However, Jin Ping Mei still strives to find its own answer. Emptiness is color, and color is emptiness, regardless of whether all existence is reasonable or not. There is no need to argue or struggle. All the endless desires and pains can be freed from nothingness. Therefore, the author created a peaceful tranquility at the end. The vast white earth is so clean. Pay attention to all living beings in the world with the compassionate heart of Buddhism, so that the incurable life can be consummated in the compassion of my Buddha, and realize the great wisdom of life. This may be the profound meaning of the embroidered version of Jin Ping Mei. As an inevitable dialectical theme, color and emptiness permeate the whole book. Just like in A Dream of Red Mansions, good is good, good is good. At this point, the two wonderful books a surprising consensus was reached. Returning to the text, monk who was drinking and feasting, gave Simon King 100 pills as a gift. According to Monk Hu's introduction and Simon King's personal practice, these 100 magical aphrodisiacs have shown great sexual power. The text also uses a long poem to praise its magic. However, what deserves our attention is the last two sentences of this long poem. Sentence, giving it to a close friend will always be a way to protect yourself. Judging from the ending of the story, we know that Simon King's request for a prescription for medicine, based on the custom of teaching a man to fish is worse than teaching him to fish, was in vain, because Monk Who ran out of medicine and Simon died. So the impression we get is that the monk's medicine was Simon King's life-threatening talisman, and Simon King eventually died of the monk's medicine. In this case, this medicine is considered to be poison. So how can it be used as a preservation prescription? According to the ancient knowledge of sexology, Fang Zhongshu can achieve the purpose of health preservation through the practice of collecting yin and replenishing yang, returning essence, and replenishing the brain. In other words, although Hussein-Yo enhances sexual ability, it also gives sexual self-control. In essence, its goal is not to turn men into supermen with extraordinary sexual abilities, but to turn them into freely retractable men. Health tools. Of course, Simon King didn't pay attention to this. He put Hussein's medicine on his body, ignored Hussein's warnings, and enjoyed the abnormal pleasure brought by his extraordinary sexual function without any scruples. So the so-called self-protection method, finally it became a reminder. Therefore, the medicine itself is not guilty, and it is only the stupid people who are wrong. In addition, we can also make further associations with Hussein Yao. 100 monk pills brought Simon King to the peak of his sexual ability. So, what made him reach the peak of power? My answer is 100 large Western beads. Although 100 large Western beads have never played their intended role, they themselves are a symbol of extraordinary wealth. It turns out that Simon King, the shopkeeper of the herbal medicine shop, has only left his footprints in front of the county government office and Guilin Lane. Even with Meng Yulu's windfall, it is not enough for him to live a decent life in the dark officialdom. To expand his industry and family property indefinitely, it will be impossible. To exchange gifts for a 5th-grade official title, and to befriend the emperor's disciples as a top scholar, as a small businessman and king, he mainly had to rely on the huge wealth brought by Li Pinger. However, 100 large Western beads, as the chief representative of this immeasurable wealth, did not bring her happiness by Li Pingera's side, nor did they bring her peace by Wu Yunyang's side. They were 10 times the same as Simon King's. One's family's wealth was the same, but he would not bring it with him or take it with him when he died. And 100 pills of Humung medicine, which were clearly said to be a self-protection remedy and warned repeatedly not to use more, finally killed Simon King. The invisibility about wealth and wealth written down from the first chapter has reached its peak in this chapter. Hussein Yao has witnessed the success and failure of a greedy life, while Jiang Das, who has witnessed the vicissitudes of life in the colorful world. 100 foreign medicines and 100 large Western pearls represent sex and wealth respectively, and play a very good role in the whole book.
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.